class is really about, okay, we've been talking about setting appointments. How do you get appointments? So now that we've gotten an appointment, now what we're going to talk about today and on Thursday is how do I now go from I've set the appointment to now I'm at the appointment, and what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? What is it I want to get done at the appointment? So, again, as we had said before, so for you guys on Zoom, looks like we maybe had one or two more join. Make sure you throw your name in the chat box so that I know and keep track and put on the spreadsheet so that I don't email you and say that you haven't been here. But here's what I want to start with. So we're going to assume that I am a client, you are the agents, and we've set an appointment and I've come into the office. Now, for the sake of what we're going to talk about today, let's assume that I am the buyer of a house, okay? And so what I want you to do is to write down, so for you guys that are online, I want you guys to write down what questions do you currently ask? And if you've never met with a buyer, then what questions would you ask of me as your client that would help you to know what I'm looking for in a home? And so essentially what I'm asking is I want you to write down 2 or 3 questions that you would ask a buyer that would help you to know what to go look for them in terms of helping them find a house. So what's the criteria that you're going to ask about from me that's going to allow you to go to the MLS to find houses that are going to look for me? So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So take a minute or two, write that down, 2 or 3 questions. Now, the other thing, so again, it looks like 1 or 2 more have joined us on Zoom. Make sure you guys throw your name in the chat box so that I have a record of who was in the class today, okay? And then just write down 2 or 3 questions that you would ask of a buyer of a house that's going to help you to know what they are looking for in a home so that you know what now to go find in terms of properties on the MLS to take to them, okay? All right, so I'm going to give you just 1 more minute to do that. Now, the other thing, so while you're writing that down, let me say this. You're going to hear me refer to buyers today. You're going to hear me talk a lot about the buyers of a house, but keep in mind that when I say just buyer, I'm also including the sellers to that, because really in my mind, at the end of the day, whether you're working with the buyer of a house or the seller of a house, they are buying your services. So when you hear me talk about buyers, a lot of times I'm including sellers in that when, even though I say buyer, it's because they're buying your service. Okay. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right. And so again, for you guys on Zoom, we got a ton of people on Zoom and I got 1 in person with me here. So I'm going to rely a lot on you guys from Zoom. Vince wants to make sure he's not the only one answering every question, right? Yeah. He just gave me a thumbs up. See, he doesn't even want to answer that. So I'm going to rely on you guys on Zoom to participate quite a bit. All right. So with that, here's where we're going to start then. So I'm going to come back to those questions later on, but I wanted you to write them down right now because it's possible that you may change some of those questions as we go through this. And I want you to have seen what you would have done versus what you probably are going to change to do. All right. Now, let me start with this question. So I'm going to ask a question that I don't want you to answer yet, but I'm going to have you answer it in just a minute. So I'm going to first ask you a question, then I'm going to write down some stuff on the board here, and then I'm going to come back and have you answer the question. So here's the question I want you to be thinking about while I write this down. And what the question is why does anybody buy anything? So why do people buy anything? So again, don't answer yet, but I'm going to have you, I'm going to ask it again in just a minute. And I do want you to answer then about telling me, so why do people buy anything? All right. But first, before we do that, here's where I'm going to start with is top 3 complaints about real estate agents. What do you think are the top 3 complaints about real estate agents? Vince?
Poor performance.
Poor performance. Okay, so you're right, although it's more specific than that. That's one of them. So that is, and actually what you're saying actually encompasses all three of them. So there's some specifics though. Okay, so what about you guys on Zoom?
We get paid
sorry.
too much for too little work.
Okay, we get paid too much for little work. Okay, good. That's going to be related a little bit. Somebody else?
Lack of communication.
Good. Okay, good. Yeah, I like where you guys are going. So yes, you're on the right track too. I'm going to be more specific than even that though. But I love what
I
you
was
said.
gonna say, yeah, impersonal.
Impersonal. Okay, good. All right, so here I'll give them to you guys. You guys are on the right track. So I'm going to give them to you a little different than how you've said it, but what you guys are saying is right on. So the first one is that we don't return calls. So the number one complaint about real estate agents is we don't return calls. So that's the first complaint. And if you guys have tried calling other agents, you'll know that's true, right? Okay. Number two, the second complaint that people have about real estate agents is that we don't listen. And then this next one, if you've been an agent for much time at all, you're going to think this one maybe is a little funny. Maybe not necessarily that you'll think it's funny, but you may think that it's the reverse of what I'm about to say. But the third complaint about us is that we waste their time. So the third complaint that people have about us as real estate agents is that we waste their time. Now, like I say, a lot of times agents will look at it and go, huh, they wasted my time. I wasn't wasting their time. So I'm going to go through and talk about this. So what Derek said is right on. It's in terms of communication and Vince saying underperformance and all those kinds of things is really related to this. But the top three complaints that people have about us is we don't return calls, we don't listen, and we waste their time. Now, I'm going to show you why it is that they have that experience. Because like I said, we think of it as they waste our time and not that we're wasting their time. But I'm going to show you why they think that and why they feel that way. Okay. Now, so now I'm going to come back to the question that I asked you before. Why do people buy anything? So give me some answers to that. Why do people buy anything?
To improve their lifestyle.
Okay, good. I like that. Why else?
Because they think they need it.
Okay, good. Love that. Any other thoughts? Okay, good. I think that was Scott that said, so here's how I'm going to say it. And you guys tell me how you would respond to this then, because I'm going to build on what Scott just said. He said, because they think they need it. How would you respond if I said this? Nobody buys anything they don't need. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I do not agree on that.
Okay, even though you said that they think they need it.
Well, I'm saying they think they need it because sometimes people don't need the things they buy.
Okay, good. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
There's a difference between wants and needs.
Okay, Vince says there's a difference between wants and needs. Okay, good.
Very accurate.
So here's the thing. Nobody buys anything they don't need. So give me an example then. It doesn't have to be Scott, anybody that's on here. Give me an example of something you have bought that you don't need.
Mm-hmm.
My dog.
Did you say your dog?
Yes.
Okay.
My bad. I thought I muted it.
Oh. Yep, you weren't muted, Scott.
My very expensive computer.
Okay, good. So we'll use, since Vince here in the room, we'll use him. So he just said my very expensive computer, but you don't need it.
Yes.
No, you do need it or you don't?
I don't.
You don't. Okay, good. Is it here at the office?
No, it's at my apartment.
Okay. Will you bring it to me tomorrow?
No,
Why?
because it's massive.
Yeah, but you don't need it.
Fair.
So if you don't need it, then therefore bring it to me and let me have it. He's thinking, and they just said no. Now why? Why?
Because I like it.
Okay. So he's saying because I like it. What I'm saying is he needs it. When I said to you, nobody buys anything they don't need, you guys immediately are going to and thinking of this. So you learned in school, in high school at some point about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Does everybody remember that? Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Which the first need that Maslow said, Abraham Maslow said that we all have is the physiological, food, shelter, clothing, water, all of that kinds of stuff. So when I said to you, nobody buys anything they don't need, you guys immediately went to that space of thinking, well, I don't need the computer to live. Like I could survive without it. People did for thousands of years. They lived without computers, so I don't need it. But I'm telling you, there is something else besides the physiological needs that we all have. Okay. So, and that's to some extent, this is related then to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once we have the physiological needs met, then we go to the next need, which he said was then going to be safety. Then after that was to love or be loved, and on up to self-actualization. Well, the problem with us, when I say nobody buys anything they don't need, you're thinking physiological. But we have these other needs that are part of who we are. That in order for us to meet those needs, we then go out and buy things. So we will go and buy something to fulfill a need. So when I ask you, why do people buy anything? The answer to that is to fulfill a need. Every time we buy anything, we do it for one of the reasons of either it's a real need. So this is kind of the where we're going to launch off a little bit from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But we either have a real need, meaning the food, shelter, clothes, that kind of stuff, or we have, on the other hand, we have these perceived needs. That is other things that are going on under the surface that we need to go buy this computer to fulfill that need. Now, we don't know what that is consciously. It may be in the unconscious that we're unaware of what that need is that we're fulfilling. But every time you buy anything, it is to fulfill a need. Okay. So, and now again, there's two types of needs. There's real and then perceived. Now, the challenge is when we look at somebody buying something that is not a real need, it's a perceived need, we look at it from the standpoint of, well, I would never do that. Therefore, they bought something they don't need. So when I say that nobody buys anything they don't need, we, even with our own selves, will look at it sometimes and go, I don't know why I went and bought that, but I went and bought this, whatever. Well, there is some need that's inside of you that needs to be fulfilled by going and making that purchase. So there's two types of needs. There's real needs and then there are perceived needs. Okay, now, so let's go now to the next level on this of, let's say, so again, I'm a buyer that I'm going to buy a house. I've come into your office. We're sitting down and we're now going to start to talk about what it is that I want to buy as a home. And let's say that what I end up telling you is that I want to buy a home that is high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Okay. So now, and I don't need specifics on this from you guys. I don't need you to tell me the exact like location that you would go and show, but in general. And when I say in general, I don't even mean city, but just tell me back what you would do. So I tell you, I want to buy a home that's high on a hill with a view of the city lights. So just in general, and again, no specifics, I don't need any location, but what are you going to then show me? What houses would you show me?
Houses on a hill,
Okay, good.
a view of the city lights.
So anybody going to do differently than that that's on Zoom? So Vince said he's going to show me then houses that are on a hill with a view of city lights. Anybody going to do any different? Or is that what you would do too?
I feel like I'd have more questions to ask first.
Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, I'd show you houses on a hill with a view.
Okay, good. So notice that, then that's what's gonna happen. Okay, so now let me take you through this. Now, part of what I'm gonna show you is how our way that we have been trained to communicate, the way that you and I have been trained to communicate, actually creates problems, and it actually creates this. It creates the scenario of that we don't listen and that we waste their time. And the issue is the way that you and I have been trained to communicate is why they have the experience of that we don't listen and we waste their time. So I'm going to now help you understand where that comes from and what creates that. Okay. So I've just said to you that I want to see a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. You're now going to go out and show me homes that are high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Now, we go out and we look at houses, and what happens is then this. So let me show you what this looks like. So this, how your brain works is 10% of who you are is conscious. 90% of who you are as a personality is unconscious. So 90% of your decisions you make, everything that's going on in your life is 90% of it is unconscious. 10% of it is conscious. Now, in terms of this, right here, this 10% of who you are as a personality is logic. Okay? So the 10% of who you are is logical, it's reasonable, it's rational. Now let me tie this back to what I said. When I said to you, nobody buys anything they don't need, and you guys then would have saying, no, that's not true. People do buy things they don't need. Where you went then is to this 10% of who you are. At a logic level, to where things are logical, reasonable, rational, you're saying, I don't need that. I don't need the computer. And you're right from that real need standpoint. But 10% of who you are is logic. The other 90% is where things are illogical, they're irrational and unreasonable. Okay. Or said another way, down here in this 90% is where the emotion resides. Okay. Buying a house, and you might even argue buying anything, everything that we buy, is an emotional purchase. So we won't go into the everything, but let's talk just about buying a home is really more of an emotional purchase. Now, my proof in that is that it is not uncommon when you're working with a buyer to have them say to you, I don't know how to explain what it is that I'm looking for in a home, but I'll know it when I see it. So has anybody heard that, had a client say that to them? So anybody have you ever heard that, Vince?
I've heard it from one of my mom's clients.
Okay, so he's heard it from one of his mom's clients. What about the rest of you guys?
Yeah, I've heard it.
You've heard it, Scott? Okay, good. Who else? I got to get more people than Scott participating in here. Or just nobody else has heard it, apparently. And that's okay if you haven't, that's fine. Or you're not really there paying attention. I can see Lisa is, so hi, Lisa.
No, I haven't heard it, to be honest.
Okay, good, Derek. Thank you. All right. So that's fine. You're going to hear it. You're going to hear people say to you, when you sit down to meet with them and you say, tell me what you're looking for in a home, they're going to say, I don't know how to explain it to you, but I'll know it when I see it. Well, here's why they're saying that. The reason they say, I don't know how to explain it is I'll know it when I see it, is because what they're looking for in a home is contained under the surface. So this 10% is where the conscious is, 90% is unconscious. So 90% of the process of them buying a home takes place in this unconscious part of their brain. So they say, I don't know how to explain it to you because they have the information there. It's just in the unconscious. It's in the subconscious where they don't know how to then put it back together to tell you what it is. So here's what happens. They do the very best that they can of telling you what they're looking for, which takes place at the logic level. So they say what I said to you guys. I want to buy a home that's high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Now, that's the logical, reasonable, rational thing they want to buy. That's not what they want to buy. I mean, it's 10% of what they want to buy, but 90% of what they want to buy is not that. Okay. So what happens though is this. This is how communication works. So what happens then is they tell you at this 10% level what it is they want. Well, you as a personality are 10% conscious and 90% unconscious. So you take that in, the information that they give to you at this 10% logic area, and then you interpret it down here into the 90% of what it means to you. And then what happens is this. Every single one of us assumes that eventually everybody else is going to figure out we were right. So what happens is they tell us what they want at this level. We take what it means to us and then bring it down based on what it would mean to us in the 90%. Now, so here, let me show you what I mean. And I need to hear from pretty much everybody on Zoom. So if you're thinking, I don't have to participate, you have to participate, okay? Why would you, so I want you to tell me why you would want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Now, even if you don't want one, just think of for you, why do you think you would want one then, okay? And I want to hear from everybody. Why would you want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights?
Appearance.
Okay, so appearance, say more about that, Britt.
The way you look to other people.
Okay, good. Awesome, good. Somebody else give me some answers.
Nicer neighborhoods.
Okay, so nicer, and so Lisa, what does that do? What meaning, okay, so yes, I have a nicer neighborhood, but so what?
Capitol Hill, Thousand Oaks.
Okay, but tell me like what would being in the nicer neighborhood do for you though?
Better investment.
Okay, good, love it. Okay, good. What?
And being in a better neighborhood, it also provides safety.
Okay, good. So Vince just said safety. Good. What else? Give me some other reasons that you guys would want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights.
Privacy.
Okay, thanks, Bowen. Privacy, good.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna say, like something more secluded.
Okay, good.
You like the view. You like to look out at the city lights.
I was just gonna say the view.
Okay, good. So Janae, let me go back to you then. So what would having the view do for me though? Because yes, I'm in agreement.
Make me happy.
Okay, good. There we go. Good. Okay.
You
Any
might
other-
have a better resale value when the time came,
Okay, good. I like it.
which is better investment.
Okay, perfect. Anyone else have anything different?
Get out of the smog of the city.
Okay, good. Thanks, Melissa. Love that. Good. Okay. Now, look at what just happened here. Is they said they want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. What I just had you guys do is tell me, you would have heard that and then tell me what that would have meant to you at the 90%. Okay. So then what happens is this, we now go out and look at properties that are high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Now, remember what I'm answering and showing you is how we go from this, we don't listen and we waste their time, okay, of how this all comes about. Is what happens then is we go out and we look at properties that are high on a hill with a view of the city lights. You then are going to talk to them about why you would want that. So meaning, so like Lisa brought up about value. So what's going to happen then is we go out and we look at the properties, and then typically what happens is we start to talk to them about what it would mean to us rather than what it means to them. Now, which, by the way, let me pause real quick in all of this and tell you, everything we are talking about today works in your relationships too, by the way. This is not just real estate, but the way that we tend to communicate, we don't listen very well. We don't take the time to really listen to what people are not saying versus what they are saying. And so part of what I'm giving you this exercise in will improve the way you just communicate with the people around you as well, okay? But so what happens then is they say they want the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Well, they don't know why they want it. They do, but they don't. Meaning they know at an unconscious level what it is, but they don't know how to put it into words that would make sense to you of what they're looking for. Meaning, and I think it was Janae that said it, it was like, they're not going to show up and say, I want to buy a home that makes me feel good. Like, okay, I don't think there's a spot on the MLS, at least not that I'm aware of, that I can go in and do a search for homes that make you feel good. Like, I don't think that's out there. So they don't say that. Instead, they say what, and now this is very, very key. Make sure you hear what I'm saying right here. When they tell you they want the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, whatever it is that they tell you that they want in the home, what they're telling you is what they think, or at least the best way they know how to meet that need of feeling good, or the value, or the privacy, or the prestige, whatever it was you guys said, they have, that's really what they want. Now, so remember, I said nobody buys anything they don't need. See, when the people show up saying they want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, they actually are wanting to buy the feel good. They're wanting to buy the privacy, the prestige, the health, all of those things you guys mentioned. That's what they really want. So this is so crucial. Make sure you really hear what I'm saying. They don't necessarily want the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. They want these other pieces that you told me of why they would want it. It's prestige, it's privacy, it's health, it's seclusion, it's the way it makes them feel. All of that, those things is what they are wanting to buy, not the house high on the hill with view of city lights. Which now, so the next piece of this ties in this way. You are going to hear people say this if you haven't heard it already. And you may have said it. Buyers are liars. Has anybody ever said that or heard it said in real estate? No? You guys haven't heard it. Melissa, you've never heard Jason say buyers are liars.
Oh, I'm sure he has. I just don't.
Don't remember. That's okay.
Specific time.
I just have to pick on you because I'm like, he's been in real estate long enough. He's probably. Okay. So, but here's the thing.
Yeah, as far as
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, yeah, I was just gonna say from my experience in sales, that terminology is as simple as, "Oh, I'm busy at work." Yet you answered the phone.
Yeah, good. So who is that talking? All I can see is a phone number.
It's Chase.
Oh, perfect.
Chase Reed.
Okay, perfect, Chase. Thanks. Okay, yeah, thanks, Chase. That's right. You're exactly right. Is that people will do that and answer the phone, and then they love to say, "Oh, I was just in the middle of da 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 whatever." Yeah, right on. Okay. So people, here's the thing that I want you to remember from today forward. If you ever say buyers are liars, or you hear somebody say buyers are liars, the truth about that is the person, whether it's you or somebody else, was really just a poor communicator. And I know we don't like that, but that's the truth, is when we say buyers are liars, it's not true. The problem is this, where that comes from is they told us they wanted a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. That's not what they want. What they want was all the stuff you guys already said, either the health, the prestige, the privacy, the seclusion, the way it made them feel, all of those things. That's what they're buying. They're not buying the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, meaning they may buy the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, but that's not what they're buying. They're buying this emotion that it gives them. Okay. So I'm going to give to you, and it'll probably be Thursday, but I'm going to give to you 15 benefits that what I have found is any purchase that somebody is making is to fulfill one of those 15 needs. So really what this whole class I'm teaching you has its roots in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's not exactly the same. It's taking Maslow's idea of the hierarchy of needs, but distilling it down to why people buy what they buy, and specifically real estate, is what we have found is it's usually to fulfill one of 15 needs. There are 15 needs that when they show up telling you the things that they want in a home. In fact, actually, let me even do it this way. So let me erase some of this. Maslow stuff here. Really what they're doing is this. Think of it this way. So I'm drawing a T-square, and on this up here, it says features. Oops. Features, and over here is benefits, or you can think of it as needs, which is why we call it this needs analysis class, is these are the needs. So just keep in mind that anytime somebody tells you a feature of a house, so let's just say garage, if somebody says they want to buy a garage, there is some need over here that really is what they want. They don't want the garage. The garage is there to fulfill the need. And now this is the key piece. The need doesn't have to be met in the exact way they tell you, or through the feature they tell you. So let me give you an example of that. When I first learned this process that I'm teaching you guys in, I actually flew to Northern California and I spent 3 full days being trained on this process. And in the process of doing that, there's a couple things that I'll share with you from it. But in the process of doing that, when we sat down, I had somebody else take me, like I was the buyer, and they asked me, describe for me your ideal home. Well, for those that were in class last week, when we talked about the process of the percolation, information gathering, and active. So if you remember that, percolation, information gathering, active. And me saying to my neighbor, him asking me, when are you going to move? And I said, I'm never going to move. Well, part of the timing on all of that was when that took place was I had gone to California to be trained in this. And I had somebody take me through the process I'm going to teach you in. And one of the things that I described, so again, coming back to this 10%, I said, here's what I want to buy in a home is, and here were the 3 main features that I listed. I wanted a 2-story on 1 acre of land, and I wanted a swimming pool in my basement. Okay. Now, the home that I ended up buying within a year of that, and now keep in mind again, if I wasn't an agent and I had been your buyer and you had said, tell me what you're looking for in a home, I would have said to you, I want to buy a home that is a 2-story on 1 acre of land with a swimming pool in the basement. Now, the home that I bought within a year of that was a 2-story on a 1/4 acre of land, no swimming pool. So you would have said, buyers are liars. See, so from the standpoint of you as an agent, what I told you I wanted is not what I bought. And in fact, I didn't finish the story on the high on a hill with a view of the city lights. So let me back up for a second. So I told you I wanted to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. You've gone out and shown me properties. Every time we went out and showed properties, you talked about what this meant to you. What home high on a hill with a view of the city lights would have meant to you is what you would have talked about. But that's not what I wanted it for. So I would have felt like, well, this isn't actually meeting my needs then. So what happens then is you keep showing me properties that are high on a hill with a view of the city lights, meaning we go out and look at them. I go, no, no, no. So you go back to the computer, find more. We go out and look at them. They still say no. We go find more. I go look at them, still say no. Then what happens is this is, and I may have already given away the punchline to this, but I call you up one day and go, okay, I found the property that I want to buy. Okay, Vince, found it. Here's the MLS number, or here's the address of the property. He jumps on the computer, he pulls it up. When you look up the property, the home is not high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Instead, it's tucked away in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees. So the only view is trees, no lights. Did I buy what I originally wanted? So Vince went like this. I don't know. What about the rest of you?
No, you did not.
Okay, Scott says no.
Unconsciously, you probably did.
Okay, good. Vince just said unconsciously I probably did, and you're right. I actually did.
Yeah, I was gonna say based on the 90%, they bought exactly what they wanted.
Perfect. That's right. So keep in mind that that's just it. Is see, it wasn't the feature that I wanted, it was the benefit. So now let me ask you this question. For all of you guys, stop and think about when I asked you why you would want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, and you said health, and you said prestige and seclusion or privacy, and the way that it made you feel, could I get that same benefit from a home that was in a canyon surrounded by trees? Would that give me privacy? Yes. Would it give me potentially health? Meaning like, so I think Melissa, you said getting up out of the smog or the inversion or whatever. Depending on where it's at, that could still give me that. Could it give me prestige? Like meaning having when my friends drive over me and like, wow, this is awesome. Like, cause it's a private lane and whatever. So I'll notice that it's that need that I'm trying, as the buyer, I'm trying to fulfill, not the home high on a hill with view of the city lights. It's to fulfill the need. If I can fulfill the need through some other feature, I'll do it. So now let's come back to again, me. I said I wanted a 2-story, 1 acre of land and a swimming pool in the basement. Now, I ended up with a 2-story on a 1/4 acre, no pool. So did I buy what I really wanted? Well, you guys know the answer. Yes, I did, based on the 90%, right? It met my needs. So now, let me show you what I mean. And this is really how, like, honestly, if I was not an agent and you would have come to my wife and I, and you had been our agent and you had said, and even actually this still somewhat actually exists in our life today, honestly. You had said to me, what are you looking for in a home? I would have said the 10%, 2-story, 1 acre, swimming pool in the basement. Okay, great. So now you go out and start to look for properties and you go find them. Then what happens is this, you now go show me. I would have walked up to every property. I would have looked at it and I would have seen the 1 acre of land. And guess what would have gone through my mind as soon as I stepped out into the backyard? Any thoughts of what I would have thought about the 1 acre?
That's a lot of yard work.
That's exactly right, Melissa. That's what would have happened is I would have looked at it and went, I don't want to spend my whole Saturday doing yard work. Like, this is going to be a lot of work. And so therefore my wife might've been like, yeah, it's perfect. I love it. Cause I could have this huge garden and I could do all this stuff. But for me, I would have been like, yeah, I don't really want that. So now what would have happened then is I would have kept saying, yeah, but I do want 1 acre. I do want 1 acre. Well, hopefully you guys are starting to see, and I think Scott brought it up, but you would have probably then started to say, well, what do you want 1 acre for? Why do you want a 1 acre lot? And what I would have said at the time, so this is going back 20 years ago, my oldest, who is now, I don't know how old he is, 26, yeah. So he would have been 5.5 years old, basically, or 6 years old. I would have said, I want a spot that he and I can go outside and play baseball. Well, at 5 or 6 years old, in my mind, 1 acre would have been totally sufficient. Yet by the time he's 10, 11, or 12, that's probably not going to work to have that much. But my thinking, that's what it was. Well, so now I already mentioned to you, I ended up buying a home that's on a 1/4 acre of a lot. But guess what is right outside of my backyard? A park. I got the neighborhood park right outside of my backyard. I mean, technically it's a parking lot right outside, but then the other side of the parking lot basically is a park that I don't know how big the park is, but it's probably 3 or 4 acres, maybe even 5. I don't know. It might be only 2, somewhere. It's more than 1. I'll tell you that. And it's probably 3 or 4 acres. Well, that actually works better for me than me owning an acre. Because yes, I have to pay an HOA fee to have access to it, but I don't have to maintain it. Part of that HOA is somebody else comes in and maintains it. So for me, so even actually it's interesting because I know this now because of understanding all this we're talking about. My wife still wants 1 acre. And I've told her, I'm great with us buying 1 acre as long as we're paying somebody else to come in and do the maintenance besides the gardening that she wants to do. I'm like, I'm great with that, provided somebody else comes in and does all the work on the yard. So, but notice for me, I would have shown up saying, I want 1 acre, but did I really want an acre? No, but I wanted the benefit of an acre. So in actuality, when we say buyers are liars and we were looking at it saying that, you know, somebody ended up buying a home that didn't meet what they said they wanted, I want to make sure you guys understand The truth is they probably found a way to meet that need that is actually better than what they told you. So, because that's what happened with me is I would have said I want 1 acre, but in actuality, I found a way to meet the need, which the need for that, by the way, one of the 15 benefit words for me on that one was recreation. That's what I was looking for is recreation. See, versus a 1 acre lot is gonna make me work in the yard all day on Saturday versus going out and having recreation. See, it's the recreation I wanted, not the 1 acre. So when I bought then this home on a 1/4 acre, but I've got a neighborhood park outside the back, works perfectly for what I actually really wanted. Make sense? Okay, any questions? This would be the point, if you guys were in the classroom right now, I would say if you're clear, say yes, and then I would listen for how you say yes. And instead, you're all on Zoom and I kind of go, yeah, see, exactly. Okay, I'm gonna assume, so if you're not clear, ask questions. Okay, so the next piece of this then is, so why is it then that people have this information tucked away in the unconscious, and how do we bring it then to the surface? That's the next piece of this is, how do we then get this information that's down here in the unconscious that truthfully, if you would have asked me before I learned this process, if you would have said, what do I want 1 acre for? I would have told you how I would use it, but I wouldn't have known why I wanted it. So what I would have said is something along the lines of, well, I want it to be able to go outside and play baseball with my son. Okay, but that's not one of the needs that I have. The recreation was the need that I wanted. It wasn't about the 1 acre. It's about the recreation. So typically we're pretty good, and somebody had brought up earlier about I would have asked more questions. We usually are pretty good at asking more questions of why do you want a 1 acre piece of ground? And they're pretty good at telling us why they want it. What we aren't typically as good at is digging down then into this unconscious part of the brain to figure out what's the need that's driving. Now, here's what happens. What happens then is this. Think of it this way. So this is your brain and how it stores information. So your brain stores information in discrete locations. So anytime you have had an experience in your life, your brain then takes that experience and then it compartmentalizes it. So it breaks it apart and it puts the pictures in one area. It puts the decisions you've made about it in another area. And then it puts the feelings in another area. So what happens is everybody has an idea of what they want in a house. When they say to you, I know what it is, but I don't know how to explain it. The reason they don't know how to explain it is because of this. The pictures of what they're looking for in a home are in one area of their brain. The decisions are stored in another area and the feelings are then in another area. So those things are broken apart. They're compartmentalized. What our job then becomes is we have to get the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings to then reintegrate. We've got to get those pictures, the decisions, and the feelings to come back together. When we do that, when we get the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings to come back together again, creates a term that we call crystallization. So that's what I'm writing up here for you guys that can't maybe see it as well on Zoom. I'm trying to write big, but crystallization. Now, when you're working with a client, whether it's a buyer or a seller, your job actually, the whole purpose of you meeting with people to have an appointment is to cause crystallization. Okay? This is so important. Now, here's why. Of everything that I teach to you guys, this one probably has the shortest shelf life. And what I mean by the shortest shelf life is if I asked you in a couple of months, maybe even a couple of weeks from now, what is the purpose that you go on a buyer appointment or a seller appointment? You're going to say to try to get a listing, to try to get a buyer, which is right. That is correct. But what are you wanting to accomplish on that appointment? You're going to say to walk out with a contract, which again is good. But really, ultimately, you're trying to cause crystallization. Now, here's why. Nobody buys anything until crystallization occurs. So when you're working with a client who's out looking at houses and they keep looking at more houses, more houses, more houses, more houses, and not buying, the reason they're not buying is because they haven't crystallized. There are two ways to go about getting somebody to crystallize. The first way that you're going to go about getting someone to crystallize is through the way that most people do it. So let me say it this way. The way that most people crystallize, the way that most clients are going to go out and crystallize, specifically the buyers of a house, is through looking at houses. So typically the way we as agents get people to crystallize is we go out and show them houses. So when you see somebody, or if you personally have had a time where you have been out and you have showed house after house after house after house, and again, the people are saying, I'll know it when I see it. What they're saying is when they see it, they'll crystallize. And what they're looking for, so the people who say, I'll know it when I see it, what they're really saying to you is, I'm waiting for crystallization to occur. And when that happens, I'll know it. And that is true, by the way, it is. Said another way, think about crystallization this way. Every time you in your life have ever had an aha moment, that aha moment is crystallization, okay? Every aha moment in your life is crystallization occurring. That's so just so that you know what crystallization is. Now, but here's the key thing. Not every time that somebody crystallizes, though, will it be an aha moment. So make sure you're hearing what I'm saying. Every aha moment is crystallization, but not every crystallization will be an aha moment. Like for some people, the crystallization doesn't have to be an aha moment. It may be just a, yep, this is it. Like it doesn't have to be this profound thing. But every profound aha moment you've had in your life is crystallization occurring. Just not every time you crystallize is it going to be an aha moment. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm just always going to look to you, Vince. You are the one for the whole rest of the group, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. And for you guys on Zoom, if you have a question, please interrupt me, okay? But that's what we're trying to do. And if you lose sight of that, you'll end up showing a ton of properties to buyers. But as long as you can keep in mind the purpose of us doing a needs analysis, the whole purpose of me going and meeting with clients is to cause crystallization to occur. So it's to get the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings to reintegrate. Because here's why. Either you go show properties and get them to crystallize, or we get them to crystallize and then we go show properties, which will shorten the number of properties we have to show. Once they recognize the three, typically they buy in 2s and 3s. So let me put that up here too. As far as these needs or benefits, they buy in 2s and 3s. And we'll say more about that later as we get into it. But they buy in 2s and 3s. So they're looking for a home that meets they have 2 or 3 benefits or needs that they're trying to fulfill. Okay. All right. I feel like I'm ready to go on, but I want to just first give you a chance. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
I mean, I
No.
can just share experience where with my first buyer, I didn't get that crystallization for a while. And we looked at houses probably every week for like 3 months. So it's important to really figure out what they want at first. It saves you a lot of time, a lot of headache.
Awesome. Thanks, Bo. And that's exactly right. Is if you can cause this crystallization, it'll shorten that process. So good. I think somebody else was going to say something too. Maybe not. Okay, all right. Next then, so the next piece of this, the way that you and I have been trained to communicate is actually designed to block crystallization. So I had you guys write down some questions. So Vince, you okay coming up here and being on camera?
Maybe.
It won't be hard, I promise. So, but bring the 3 questions that you wrote down, okay? So here's what we're gonna do. Vince and I are gonna do a visual demonstration for you guys about how communication takes place. So here's what we're gonna do. So here's the rules. You and I are gonna have a conversation. You're gonna be the agent, I'm the buyer. You're just gonna ask me your 3 questions, okay?
Right.
But the rules of the game is the only person that can talk is the person holding this. Okay? Nope, you see, you just lost. Game's over. I'm just kidding. Okay. So now what I want you guys on Zoom to do is watch and pay attention to what happens, not only with just the conversation, but even look for the body language that goes on between he and I as we do this. Okay? So just do your 3 questions. Now I just lost.
What are you looking for?
So I want to buy a home that's a 2-story, that's got minimum 3 bedrooms, 4 would be better, 3 baths and a 4-car garage.
What's your price?
Haven't talked to a lender yet, but I'm assuming somewhere, $1 million, somewhere there.
Is there any specific places you want?
Good, yeah, somewhere probably central part of the valley here.
So 4-car garage, so you got a lot of vehicles or something?
No, but just a lot of stuff to store.
All right.
Okay, good. All right, give him a hand, even though you guys can't, he can't hear you. Pretend you clapped. Okay, thanks. You can sit down. I'm gonna have you come back up again in a second though. All right, so now for you guys on Zoom, and actually even Vince, you can tell me what for Vince, you can tell us kind of how you felt, but what did you guys on Zoom notice of that conversation?
I don't know. For me, it didn't really seem like a conversation. It seemed more like, other than him asking, like, why do you have a 4-car garage? But it seemed more like, not an interrogation, because that's putting it harshly, but just like question and answer.
Yeah, just surface level.
Right.
Good. Okay, go ahead, Vince.
Stage right.
Stage, yeah. Yeah, part of that is exactly, I put him on the spot, like, oh crap, I've got to stand up here and do this. Okay, but what else do you guys notice?
Yeah, it just gave like a broad overview. There wasn't really any specifics or like background on why certain things were wanted or needed.
Okay, good. Yeah, so, but no, and the reason that I did this pass the baton back and forth thing is that's typically the way our conversations go. The way that you and I have been trained to communicate is that way. It's, I ask a question, then I hand them the baton. As the buyer, I'm looking to you as the expert. So I'm looking at you as the expert. And so when you ask me a question, I'm then going to respond based on the question you've given me, and I'm going to answer the question. And then what happens is, after I've answered the question, I hand the baton back to you as the buyer. You then, or the agent, I mean, the agent then has to think of, okay, well, what's the next question? Well, then, how many bedrooms and baths, or how much do you want to spend, or what location? Like it's all these kinds of just things that, like I said before, actually work really, really well for the MLS. Like, it's great to be able to say, to punch in 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, 4-car garage in the central part of the valley, up to this price. Here's how many houses we have to go choose from. Let's go look at them. That's kind of what usually happens. Now, notice though, there is no crystallization that took place during that. Instead, he asked a question, I answered. Now, Let me show you though, so I'm gonna have you come back up, Vince. So let me show you this time though, I'm gonna be the agent. So this time I'll be the agent, you're the buyer. Do you feel better about that?
Yeah.
Less stage fright?
Yeah.
Okay, so, but we're gonna do the same thing. Now, for you guys on Zoom, again, pay attention to not just what we're saying, but body language of things that goes on too. So first off, are you okay doing this? Okay, good. Describe for me your ideal home.
Private. I want a private home with not too much, but not too little.
Okay, so private home, not too much, not too little. That's great. Tell me more.
Preferably a place to park all like my trailer, maybe my car, in a very probably a 2-car garage, maybe, and a place to put my trailer.
Okay, so someplace to put your trailer, 2-car garage. Okay, good. I'm getting a really good feel for this. What else?
A yard which I can do various projects, and maybe a shed or a workshop.
Okay, so a yard with a shed or a workshop. That's great. Tell me more.
A basement that I can probably rent out too.
Oh, that's a good idea. So renting out the basement. Good. What else?
An office, maybe preferably that has a window or something in it.
Okay, so an office that's got a window in it. Perfect. That's great. What else?
It in good shape. Maybe some trees and stuff for some shading.
Okay, so some trees give you some shade and stuff. Okay, perfect. Tell me more.
Quiet street, preferably. Not an HOA. I don't like HOAs.
Okay, so a private street, no HOA because you don't like those. That's great. Good. What else?
I can see where this is going.
Where's it going?
You lost, by the way.
Oh, you tricked me. Good job. So where's it going? Where's it going?
You're asking me questions like, okay, what do you want? Okay, what do you want? You're making me think about what I want.
Okay, good. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, what else did you guys on Zoom? What'd you notice?
Notice you're not actually asking questions.
Yeah, good.
You're getting him to talk. That's all you're doing.
Okay, so good. So let me ask you this. In that scenario, then, who is this whole thing about?
The buyer.
That's right. Like, am I putting any of my, remember this thing up here of the emotion and 90% is down here and the 10%? Have I taken any of why I would want this house and put it onto him?
Nope.
No.
Yeah, I haven't. Good. What else did you notice? Well, in fact, let me ask it this way. The first time when Vince was up here and he was the agent, who was the pressure on?
The agent.
Yeah, it was on you as the agent to do what?
Ask questions.
Yeah, to come up with the next question to ask. Okay, so now when we reversed it and I was the agent and you were the client, who was the pressure on?
Him.
And why?
Because you're like racking his brain. He has to come up with, I mean, if he wants the job done right, he has to relay what he really wants.
Yeah, good. Love that. So now let me tie this together for you. Notice what I was doing is every time that I just said, I repeated back a little bit of what he had said, and then I said, that's great. What else? And then I handed him the baton. And Vince already brought it up, is what I was forcing him to do was to what?
Think.
To think. I'm forced, remember, because what we're trying to do is cause crystallization. And the only way that I'm going to cause crystallization is I got to get away from this surface level. What are you looking for in a home? 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. Like, that's where we have been trained to communicate. We've been trained to do it at this like logical, rational, reasonable level. But they don't buy at a logical, rational, reasonable level. They buy down here in the emotion side of things. Now, I want to be really clear. What we just did has not caused crystallization. We're just starting the process, okay? But notice what Vince said is what I wanted you guys to see is I forced him then to actually start to think about what he really wanted. Said another way is it forced him into picturing what he wants in a home. So it was forcing him then into starting to think about the pictures of what he would see in the home. Which, by the way, that is tool number 1. So I'm going to give you basically 3 tools. Tool number 1 is something that we call a directive. Okay. A directive is designed to direct their brain. So basically you're taking control of their brain. Now, not in a bad way or anything, but you're taking control of them, and you're going to now start to force them into picturing what they're looking for and what they want in the home. Now, here's the other side of this to keep in mind is I'm assuming, Vince, you're not looking at buying a house right now. Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep in mind that part of this for him was a little bit maybe awkward or whatever, because he's not been thinking about buying a house. But I want to make sure you understand, when you sit down with somebody who is a buyer of a house and you take them through this process, they actually have been thinking about it and trying to figure out. And so you actually become this guide for them that's going to help them cause this crystallization, which also creates some serious rapport between you and them. Because what ends up happening is they feel like you're really listening to them, but by helping them navigate this process of their pictures, the decisions, and the feelings, creates this huge amount of rapport as well, where they feel like you really listened to them. Remember this? The number 1 complaint is that we don't listen. They're going to feel listened to. And as a result of that, we're going to get the information that allows us to go out and show them properties that don't waste their time. Because the frustration is, and Bowen brought it up before, they tell you what they want, you go plug it in on the computer, you go out and start showing them properties, but it's not really what they want. And they eventually get frustrated with, they keep showing me these houses that don't work for me. And maybe the problem is the agent. I need to go get a new agent. And then they move on to a new agent. Like that happens a lot because they feel like you're wasting their time. You keep going and showing them properties. And to some extent, they're even the properties that they told you they wanted to go see. So they've told you they want to go see them. You're going and showing them, but then they feel like you're wasting their time because they don't want to buy it. Well, what they're really looking for you to do is to help them crystallize. And when you help them crystallize, they become very committed to you as their agent. Okay. All right. Any questions before we go to the next piece of this? I feel like I'm forgetting something. Let me check my notes here. All right. I am going to erase some of this then. And for now, I'm still going to leave this up here, the crystallization. All right, so let's go to the next step on this then. So which we just started to talk about. So tool number 1 up here is what we call directives. Directives are designed to direct them, okay? So we're going to start with describe for me, which, by the way, let me make sure I know I've said this, but I'm going to say it again because I want to make sure you guys are clear. We're mostly talking about doing this with the buyer of a house, but this applies the same with the seller. And we're going to do a listing presentation class where we're going to take these pieces and plug it into the seller side. I've just found it's easier to teach you the process with the buyer of a house first. Once you understand it, we can then go into the seller side, because there's really not a lot of a difference, but there's a slight difference with the seller and the buyer. But it's easier if you understand the buyer side first. Okay. So we're going to always start our conversations with our clients with a directive. And a directive is going to be describe for me, or it could be share with me, or it could be tell me about, or it could be help me understand. Okay. So we're always going to want to start with a directive. So I'm going to say to the client, the one that I like with the buyer of a house is describe for me your ideal home. So I'm going to say, describe for me your ideal home. Now, keep in mind that with them, that they are going to think you want to have this conversation at the 10% level. So their assumption out of the gate is typically, now this depends on the person's personality style as well, but typically they're going to assume you want to hear 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage, this many square feet, this price in this area. That's what they think you want to hear. So don't be surprised when you say, describe for me your ideal home, that what happens is they start to tell you 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. Like that's going to be not surprising. So then that then is going to lead for you to do part 2, which really is still part 1. So don't write down number 2 yet. We actually are not going to get to number 2 until Thursday. But the next thing that I'm going to want to do then is so first thing that I'm going to do is say, describe for me your ideal home. They're then going to tell me a few things. Once they've told me, then I'm going to want to use what we call a prompter. Okay. A prompter is going to be, and this is what I did with Vince. What else? You're going to say things like this. What else? Keep going. Say more. Okay. So what's going to happen is you're going to say, describe for me your ideal home. They're then going to give you back something. Once they do, you're going to then want to summarize back what they said. Now, so if they only said, if they said 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, then you're going to go, okay, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, what else? And, or keep going, say more, just something like that, a prompt. You're going to prompt them to keep going. Now, what's going to happen though, is what Vince already told us. What's going to happen is when you do that, what you're communicating to them in a subtle way is, I want more information. I need you to go down into the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings part of your brain to tell me what it is. See, you're forcing them to go from the conscious down into the unconscious or the subconscious part of their brain to get more information by saying, what else? Or keep going, tell me more. Okay. That's what's going to happen. So it forces them then to stop and actually start to think, okay, well, what do I really want? Now, like I said, somebody who has been thinking this through and is already making plans for that is going to have plenty more to say. Like they're going to then realize that you're really interested in what they are looking for, and they're usually going to really start to talk at that point. But when they figuratively hand you back the baton, so keep in mind, like, we're not really going to do that with our client. We're not really going to be like, okay, the only person that can talk is the one holding the baton. You're not going to do that. But figuratively, that's what you want to do. So figuratively, as soon as you say to them, describe for me your ideal home, or you say what else, or keep going, say more, you're going to figuratively hand them back the baton, and then you're going to do not take it back. Like that's why I like using this with a real person of passing it back and forth. What you don't want to do is reach over and grab back the baton from them. So you're going to hand it to them by what else, keep going, say more, or through the directive of describe for me your ideal home. Once you hand it to them, you're going to wait for them to hand it back. Now, what I mean by that is, because you're now forcing them down into this part of the brain where they have to actually think about it, it's possible that they quit talking, but they are thinking. And so if you notice by reading their face that they're like, either looking up or down or sideways, whatever, if they're not looking at you figuratively handing you back the baton, don't say anything. Don't interrupt, just be quiet. If there is silence between the two of you, it's okay. It's if they're thinking. Like if they're so yeah, let's see. I mean, I guess I would want, and they sit and they're doing this where you can tell they're thinking, don't interrupt. Just sit there quiet, let them think, because again, what you want them doing is the whole purpose of doing this, the whole process is to cause crystallization. They're now starting that process. And if you then start to ask another question or interrupt them, it breaks it. It'll interrupt this crystallization that's going to start to happen. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So I'm going to do that prompter. The other thing that I did is positive feedback. So keep in mind, as part of this directives and prompters is the positive feedback. Every time that he handed me back the baton, every time they figuratively hand you the baton, what you want to do is make sure to give them some positive feedback. So you want to either be saying, yeah, that's great. That's exciting. Wow, that sounds very interesting. I'm getting excited to hear more about this. Like something along the lines of you want to reinforce to them of they're doing exactly what you want them to do as they're picturing this. So as they tell me, I'm going to then summarize back. Hey, so yeah, so you said you wanted to have the backyard with some trees in the backyard. Wow, that's exciting. What else? So we're going to always do some positive feedback, then do what else? Or positive feedback, say more. Positive feedback, keep going. Good? Okay, now, how do I know when to stop doing this? What else? Keep going, say more. What else? Keep going, say more. How do I know when to stop that? Vince is like, I'm not answering, it's on Zoom, so. How do you know when to stop, Zoom?
Basically, once they can't come up with more.
Good, Bowen, you'll love it. Yeah. Essentially, what you're wanting to do is you're going to keep doing that until they say, I can't think of anything else. They may say, that's about it. They may say, I don't know what else to tell you. But essentially, you just want to keep going until they say, I don't know what else to tell you. That's everything. Something along the lines of, that's it. All right, now, next piece of this then is while they're doing that, while they're telling us all this, I'm going to give to you on Thursday a piece of paper. So for you guys on Zoom, I hope I'll remember to send it out with the email when I put out the reminder for the class on Thursday. But if I don't, I'll get it to you after. But I'll give you a piece of paper that breaks it down into like this. So you'll have and really the truth is you could grab any blank piece of paper and just draw the lines on it like this. So I call this the grid. Okay, so this is going to be your grid. And while they're talking, so when you say describe for me your ideal home, once I say describe for me your ideal home and they start then to describe that, what you want to do is keep notes of what they say in this grid. So think of it as each one of these boxes on the grid is going to be a feature that they talk about. So what I want to do is I want to say, describe for me your ideal home. And then as soon as they start to describe it, whatever feature they talk about first is what I'm going to put in here. So let's say they start to talk about the kitchen. If they start to talk about the kitchen, then that box becomes the kitchen. And anything they say about the kitchen, I will write in here, big cabinets, whatever it is they say about it. I'm just going to keep the notes. Anything they say about that feature goes there. Well, then they go to the backyard. So they bring up the backyard and they start to talk about the backyard. Well, then that's going to become the next box. And I'm just going to keep notes of everything they say about the backyard in that box. So you follow me? So whatever feature they talk about, if they go to then the family room next, then I just go to there and anything they say about the family room, I'm going to write in there. Now, so let me, I'm now gonna do a test of you guys to test me. This is not testing you, it's testing me. See if I explain this well enough. Why do I not already have features written in on each of these boxes? Why do I have it? Why do we leave it blank and then fill it in as they talk about it? Why wouldn't I already just have a box for kitchen, family room, backyard, garage, you know, bedrooms, whatever?
Because it's not, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think for two reasons. First of all, so that you know what's number one, number two, number three for them. And secondly, if they see you writing it down, that reaffirms to them that you're listening and like really paying attention to what's important to them.
Okay, good. Yes. So for sure on that, part of us writing it down is exactly that. They know you're listening. They know you think it's important, all that. Love it. And you're on the right track on the other. There's still more to it though. What were you gonna say, Scott?
Oh, I was thinking because it's not what you want, it's what they want.
Okay, good. Yeah, and here's the thing. In fact, I realized as I said, I'm testing me, not you. I just realized what the piece that I left out. And it's this. Is it okay if we let them buy the house they want, not the one we think they should get?
Yes.
And
Yes.
usually people will laugh at that when I say it and be like, well, yeah, of course, duh. But I'm telling you that if we were to go through and look at, well, actually watch this. I'm going to prove it. Lisa, are you there okay to talk to me for a minute? You're muted though, so I can't hear you. I can see you shake your head. There you go.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. So when I asked about buying a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights and asked why you would want it, what was the reason you said?
I said it'd be a good investment, but I'm an old appraiser, so it immediately clicked like that.
Okay, then that's fine. So part of what I usually want to ask then is when it comes to buying a home, is the future value one of the important things for you?
Yes,
How did I know that?
because that's what I said, but I hear what you're saying now.
Okay, good. I'm glad you caught it. So I want to make sure everybody else, see, part of what I've noticed is when I teach this to people in class and we go through these things, every single one of you, me included, so I'm including myself in this too. Every single one of us has what we would want in a home or what we like in a home. And if you pay attention when you're asking the questions, and so part of what I would ask you to do, and this may not be exactly 100% across the board for you guys, but typically when I asked you at the start of the class to write down some questions that you would ask, typically what happens is people will write down and or end up asking questions that are more about what you would want in a home than what they would want. So to some extent, yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Well, this may go back to buyers or liars, but maybe a question, is this going to be a forever home or a short or long-term investment? And they may not know. They maybe can answer that immediately, but that may change.
Yeah, good. Love that.
You know?
We will ask those type of questions, but not till we're done with tool number one. During tool number two, which we'll talk about on Thursday, yes, you want to ask that type of question, but for right now, I wouldn't want to. And the reason being is because I'm trying to stay neutral on this rather than me impose my thoughts on it. So what typically happens though, so think of it this way. If for you personally, and I'll give you mine, what I always did, but if what's important to you in a home is the kitchen, guess what you're going to want to ask a bunch of questions about? The kitchen, because that's what's important to you. And we then assume that, and here's the funny thing is we assume by talking about the kitchen that we're helping them because that's what we would want in our home. And so we tend to make this about us, not about them. That's why I'm saying is by doing this, describe for me your ideal home takes all of your assumptions, all of your biases out of the conversation, and it makes it solely about them. Like if you noticed with Vince, I was like, what else? Keep going. Tell me more. What else? Keep going. Tell me more. I'm not projecting anything onto him and in any way. All I'm doing is getting him to tell me the information that he wants. Now, so let me tell you mine. For me, before I learned this process, one of the questions I always asked every single buyer is, how many car garage do you want? Well, guess what? It's because I would never buy a house without a garage. Therefore, I always asked questions of, well, how many car garage would you want? Now, let me give you the other example of this that was for me personally. I personally would never buy a split entry home. Like I just don't like them. So typically when I was sitting down with a buyer, if you would have had a video camera, and I wish I had all this recorded that I could show you, but the way I always started was I would say, so Vince, what style of home are you looking for?
Rambler.
Okay, so let's say that he said, I don't know, I'm not sure, or something. But if he said it doesn't matter, whatever, I usually would have said, okay, so it doesn't matter, but you probably don't want a split entry, right? So now notice that he's going to go, no. And what if really he doesn't even know what a split entry is? But if I said to the buyer, but you don't want a split entry, right? They're going to typically say, unless they're in love with them and they go, oh, no, yeah, I do want one. If they're not sure what they want, or they're pretty open to it, they're going to more likely go, yeah, no, I don't want one. Now, why? Why would they say, if I said, you don't want a split entry, do you? Why are they typically going to go, no, I don't?
Because they think you know more, so they're going to trust your opinion, and that sounded very like
Exactly. That's
opinionated.
exactly.
Or they've lived in one,
Say that again.
or they've lived in one or grew up in one.
Could be as well. So, but I want to make sure that you see that like they're relying on you're the expert. And if you're the expert and I, as the expert, I say, you don't want that, do you? They're going to go, no, I don't. Now, so why I bring that up is not long after I had been trained in this process, I had a client that I had been working with before I went and got trained in this. And as usual, in fact, I say this every time I teach this class, and I have not yet gone back and looked, but I would be willing to bet before I got trained in this process, I don't know if I ever sold anybody a home that was a split entry without a garage. Because I would never buy a split entry without a garage. So number one, I just didn't ever want a split entry, but number two, I would have never bought a home without a garage. I honestly I need to go back and look at all of my sales that I had with buyers before I was trained in this. I bet I never sold any of those properties before because I would project that onto people. Now, I do remember though, having one client that I said buyers are liars. And it was in exactly that scenario. They called what I gave you earlier. They called me up one day and said, Russ, we found a house we want to go look at. I go, okay. I jump on the MLS, I pull it up. It's a split entry, no garage. And I'm like, I remember I walked into one of the other agents at the office and I said, these guys told me they didn't want a split entry and that they wanted a garage. Yet they're now calling me to go look at a house that is a split entry, no garage. And I was like, what a waste of my time. We're going to go out and look at it. They're not going to like it. So we go out, look at it, and they go, we want to buy it. And I was like, okay. Went back to the office. I wrote the offer and I went and found the agents. I'm like, buyers are liars. These guys told me they didn't want a split entry. They wouldn't buy a house without a garage. We just wrote an offer, got it accepted. Split entry, no garage. Buyers are liars. And then we sit and have that conversation. Yet now, knowing what I know, I created the scenario of them not wanting that because I wouldn't want it. And all of us do some version of that. It might not be it might be more subtle, but I promise you, every single one of us has things that we project onto the client if we're not careful. As soon as you do this, it takes that away. Describe for me your ideal home. What else? Keep going. Tell me more. As they describe that, tell you what it is they're looking for and tell you more about it. It allows them to tell you what's important to them. So back to the reason I don't have anything filled in here is if you have kitchen written on the box, you are 100% going to ask them, well, tell me about the kitchen. Maybe they don't care about the kitchen, but because you care about the kitchen and you ask them to tell you about the kitchen, they'll answer your questions. You then go look at properties and you talk to them all about the kitchen and everything they said about the kitchen, which then they feel like you're wasting their time, even though you got them to tell you about the kitchen, but they feel like you're wasting their time because they don't care about the kitchen, but you care about the kitchen. They therefore get frustrated, go find a new agent. Does that make sense? All right, any questions? Okay, we're gonna wrap up here for today then. So on Thursday, I'll do a quick refresher to remind some of this stuff. And then we're gonna go to tool number 2, the decisions piece. This is where we get to ask all the questions that we wanna ask. So, sound good?
Yep.
And hopefully
Yep.
some of you guys that are not in St. George will show up in person on Thursday. Vince is like, yeah, I'm tired of Russ staring at me and asking me every question. So, all right, thanks for being here. If you can't and you're on